Welcome to Shattering Myths, a program devoted to the most important and fastest growing segment of our society. To those who know that the world's political, religious, media, military, and economic institution, those in America, those in Europe, those around the world, are corrupt, that they are all counterproductive, that they cannot be fixed. Our mission, therefore, is to look behind the headlines to know who is working against our interest, to understand why they are doing so. Because exposing and condemning errant and treacherous schemes, whether they be political or religious, isn't hateful. It's compassionate. It's caring. In our concluding hour, we're going to use evidence and reason to explore the Torah, which means teaching, not law, because it is liberating, it's enriching, it's empowering. And its covenant provides the only reliable answer for you and your family. Our phone number, if you'd like to participate in this discussion, is toll-free, 877-300-7645. It is my pleasure, as it is every Friday, to welcome one of the brightest minds in our world, a man who understands, doesn't just know, but actually understands the true nature of Islam, who can cite its scriptures, who can cite its histories, and who can reveal for our listeners precisely why Islam is responsible for 99% of the world's terrorist acts, and why appeasing Muslims is the sure path to our destruction. His name is al-Rassooli. He is the author of several books. Friends of mine have recently, as I have, bought his books, read them, and have benefited mightily from them. Lifting the Veil is the name of the series, The True Face of Muhammad and Islam. IQ, welcome.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Today I want to have our listeners have a little understanding of, a little perspective for what's going to happen here over the next week. You are probably aware that Secretary of State of the United States, Kerry, has developed a plan which he has not yet revealed, that he is going to unveil within the next week, and that it is a plan that is designed to cut Israel in two, giving the Muslims the West Bank. They've already been given Gaza, and entitling these Muslims to Jerusalem as their capital. The summation of this that Kerry provided, I thought, was chilling. This is what he said. He says, if his peace plan fails, the Palestinians risk losing their last chance for an independent state. He said for Israel, failure would mean that demographics would not allow Israel to remain a democratic and Jewish state. Now, my guess is, as I read that to you, there were three things that were said there that caused your skin to crawl. What do you think about this this notion of the Palestinians and them having an independent state?
Well, show me a single... first of all, I can't believe that an intelligent human being who's supposed to be like Kerry, or anybody who supports the so-called Palestinian people, could anybody find the word Palestine mentioned anywhere in the Quran? The answer is no. Could anyone find the name Palestine as a state and Palestinians as a people in recorded history in the last 6,000 years prior to 1964? The answer again is no. So where are these Palestinians? Did you know that the United Nations and the League of Nations before that never ever mentioned the word Palestine? Always Arab?
Mm-hmm.
So where is this Palestine coming from?
Yeah, of course.
Talking about.
Yeah, it is an interesting marketing myth, and we'll let's first address the myth of the Palestinian people, because this is one of the greatest myths of our day, and it is one of the most deadly and duplicitous myths of our day. The place that is being called Palestine is Israel. Yisrael is a compound of three Hebrew words: ish, which means individuals; Sarah, which means to engage, to endure; and El, which is God. So it's individuals who engage and endure with God. The place was given by the creator of the universe, whose name is Yahowah, to the descendants of Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob, the Yehudim. There is copious times in the most accurate presentation of history. Now, you mentioned history. Well, Yahowah's Torah and prophets present history from creation to today, plus another 1,000 years from today. It's a complete tapestry of history, past, present, and future. Not a single statement is inaccurate. And it boldly proclaims that the creator of the universe, who has a right to give whatever he wishes to, gave this land to Yehudim, his chosen people. And what's interesting, IQ, you probably know this, that there have now been unearthed more than a score in Egypt, in Mesopotamia in particular, but also in Israel. Scores of stone inscriptions dating back as far as the 9th century BCE, 2,900 years ago, that affirm all of the history of the Jewish people in Israel.
Not only this, most Muslims of 1,500 million people and 99.9% of humanity do not even know that not only the Creator promised Israel to the Israelites and the Jewish people, but in the Quran, in 4 major verses, Allah, the God of Islam, asserts that He promised the land to the people of Israel and their descendants.
Yeah, that must have been hard for you. Yeah, that must be hard. Yeah, it must be hard for you to say. It must be hard for you to say the God of Islam, because you and I both know that Allah is not God. But nonetheless, your point is 100% valid. That there are 4 places in the Quran that Muhammad's pretend wannabe God, Allah, declares that Israel was given to the Yehudim, to the descendants of Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob, the people of the book, as the Quran calls them. And so we have both in secular history and in Yahowah's testimony affirmation
and in the Quran.
And in the Quran.
So important. You see, the Palestinians are Muslims.
Right.
The followers of Muhammad are Muslims.
Right.
They read their Quran and they deny what the Quran is telling them.
Right.
And yet they deceive humanity by saying the Israelites or the Jews took the land from us. Yeah. They took the land from the Jews and the Christians in the 7th century. This is their history.
Right. And it's the 7th century of this era, not the 7th century of the previous era.
Absolutely, AD.
Yeah. Right. The name Palestinian is a corrupt transliteration of the Latin Philistina. And the Latin Philistina is a derivative of the Hebrew Philistine. The Philistines are a people that were most likely Greek by race. They were in all likely related to the Phoenicians and to the Greeks. And they occupied an area around today's Gaza. There were 5 cities that they occupied. And they lived in this isthmus really between a superpower, Egypt on one side, and a superpower on the other side, which were the Hittites. And the Israelites were, although they were in league with a rather powerful individual in Yahowah, they were otherwise insignificant. But the Philistines, while they had some free time between warring against the Hittites, also the Assyrians and Babylonians later, and the Egyptians, they sparred with the Jews, Yehudim. And there is these battles between the two is why the Romans in 135 CE, after they brought 3 legions to bear against the province of Yehudah, they decided that they would salt the land, they would enslave the Yehudim, the Jews, and they would rename the place from the province of Yehudah to Philistina, because those were the scriptural enemy of God's chosen people. Only one problem with that, isn't there, IQ? Didn't the Assyrians wipe the Philistines out to the last in the 7th century? 5th to 6th, 7th century BCE? Yeah.
You see, all I ask, with all due respect, let me address it another way. If our academics, historians, politicians, and others, who are so sure that Palestine and its people go back throughout most of recorded history, one would expect them to be able to answer a few very simple questions about the alleged country of Palestine and its people, the Palestinians. For example, when was the country of Palestine founded and by whom? Where did the Palestinian people originate from? What were Palestine's borders? Who were its neighbors? What language did the Palestinians speak? What writings did they use? What was their religion? Where are their temples? What monuments attest to their existence? What was the name of their capital? Name its major cities. What currency did they use? Are there any coins that attest to their economy? You know, I can go on and on and on. For example, name a few kings or rulers. What are their achievements? With which other people did the Palestinians interact? Who conquered them and whom did they conquer?
Yeah.
You know what? No human being can answer any of these questions.
Now, that is almost completely accurate. It is accurate of the people who call themselves Palestinians, but there were a people called Philistines. It's just that they're long gone, and their borders did not take into account any of the disputed lands in the West Bank or Israel. So this is a myth worth rebuking. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. We're having a conversation with al-Rassooli, an expert on the nature of Islam. And we're talking about Kerry's statement that reads as follows. Kerry said in his speech that if peace talks fail, the Palestinians risk losing their last chance for an independent state. So what we have shown is that there is no such thing as the Palestinians, and there has never been a state of Palestine. So the whole concept of negotiations to give a mythical people their own state is asinine.
But Kerry is also maliciously ignoring. There are 2 separate entities in so-called Palestinian people. Hamas, a terrorist organization, takes care of Gaza.
Yep.
And Abbas, another terrorist organization, followers of Arafat in the West Bank. And neither side have declared any intention of allowing any Jews to reside in the Middle East. So what's he talking about?
Right. Beyond that, Abbas's organization, Fatah, is a division of the PLO.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, the PLO is actually the group that is providing the negotiators to Kerry's plan from the Muslim side. The PLO, like Hamas, is an Islamic terrorist organization. And so one of the things that is being forgotten in this whole picture is that while there is no such thing as a Palestinian people or a country called Palestine, those who are calling themselves Palestinians are fundamentalist Islamic terrorists. and to negotiate with them, to give them the high ground of Yisrael, is like giving the Nazis Czechoslovakia.
Exactly the same.
And what happened? Yeah, what happened when we gave? What happened when we gave? When Neville Chamberlain gave the Nazis Czechoslovakia to achieve peace in our time?
In 9 months, we had World War II.
Yeah, that is correct. Now, it's interesting that the second part of this you haven't yet reacted to. I'm going to read it again because there's two aspects of it that are extraordinarily telling. Kerry said, for Israel, failure to accept his plan would mean that the demographics would not allow Israel to remain a democratic and Jewish state. The demographics would not allow Israel to remain a democratic and Jewish state. Would you like to comment on the first of those two, and then I'll comment on the second?
Well, on what basis is he mentioning this? Would there be a democratic and state of Israel after they make so-called peace with Muslims who are going to destroy them? The answer is no. So if I had a choice, I would rather have no peace and wait for demography. What is this demography? 20% of current population of Israel is Muslim, Arab.
Yes.
And they are treated better as human beings than in any Arab country or any Muslim country around the world.
Yeah, let's speak a moment to their treatment in just a moment. But as it relates to democratic, what Kerry is saying is because 40% of the citizens of Yisrael are Muslims and therefore avowed enemies of the Jews, and we'll consider that how they became enemies of the Jews in a moment, that their birth rate is grossly exceeding the birth rate of Jews. And so what Kerry is suggesting here is that when Muslims become the majority of the citizens of Israel, that Israel can no longer remain a democracy because he's admitting here that Islam and democracy are incompatible. Now, would you believe that a diplomat would actually say that? It's true. But that's what he's saying.
Implied. He didn't mean it that way. You understood it. I understand it. But he didn't mean it way. He was meaning it as a threat to the Jews that if you don't give the Palestinians their own state, okay, demographically. But even if they give the Palestinians their own state, the Arabs of Palestine or the Muslims in Palestine are still the same. So the demographic bomb is still there. I mean, what's he talking about?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think he is actually inferring what the Jews know, is that the population of Muslims in Israel, who have been given citizenship in Israel, is growing much faster than the Jews. And the Jews talk about this routinely in their press, that within a decade, that there will be more Muslim voters in Israel than there are Jewish voters, and that the Muslim voters will vote to turn Israel into a Sharia-compliant Islamic theocracy, which means it will no longer be a democracy. And so Kerry is playing off what the Jews admit openly in their media. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. We're having a conversation with IQ al-Rassooli. IQ, there's really some powerful insights into this. That it was said in code. Kerry is not expecting even 1/100th of 1% of the world to understand what he said, but he was speaking to Israelis in a manner that is their biggest fear. You can read the Jerusalem Post routinely runs articles that admits that the status quo is death to Israel, that Muslims are breeding faster than Jews in Israel, and that it's only a matter of time, probably a decade, before Muslims outnumber Jews as citizens, and they vote to elect a Sharia Islamic government. And Islam is incompatible with choice, and therefore Israel will no longer be a democracy. It'll no longer be a Jewish state. The majority of its citizens will be Muslims. So what do you think, IQ? Is he right? But we've got a problem with IQ. It's we show him.
Hello.
Hello, IQ. Okay.
Yeah, we got disconnected. No, he is not right, because it is not true that they are all increasing at a greater rate. The more they are educated and the more they are trying to have a better life, which they want in Israel, the less the number of people they are producing. Outside Israel, I agree with him. They produce between 5 and 12 children per family. No question about that one. But what I'm getting at is this. With so-called peace, they are doomed. And without peace, they are doomed. You know what? I would rather do it without peace.
Yeah, according to the Israeli demographics, they actually agree with Kerry's assessment here, but it has some interesting implications to it. One of them is there any Islamic-dominated country where Jews have the right to vote and are treated as if they were equal citizens? Right.
No, not only non-Jews. I want people to understand, it's nothing to do with Jews, with Islam. Yeah. There are no Christians who are given the rights. There are no Hindus, no Buddhists, no non-Muslims are allowed to be equal citizens in any Muslim state.
So the fact that there are Muslims who are citizens of Israel tells you that Israel treats Muslims much better than Muslims treat Jews.
But the Arabs know that, the Palestinians know that, Kerry knows that, the West knows that. Who is treating now, by the way, who is treating Syrians better than the Syrians are treating their own people? Israel. Yes. Over 1,000 Syrians. These are not propaganda. These are facts. Even the Arabs are saying it. On YouTube, this is very interesting. On YouTube recently, one of the major TV stations in Egypt, the host was attacking a Syrian representative by saying to him, why don't you emulate the Israeli army? They do not attack civilians. This is unbelievable. This is unheard of. They are comparing the Israeli army as people who do not attack civilians.
Yes,
they know.
In addition to that, almost all of the most gravely wounded Syrians on both sides are flown to Israeli hospitals, and the Israeli hospitals are providing superb care.
Over 1,000 people have been treated like this. By the way, there were several children born in Israel from Syrian women. These are facts. It's not propaganda. All anybody's got to do is put it in YouTube and ask, or Google and ask for it.
You made a statement earlier that is something that I have shared for a long time, which is the Muslims who were granted citizenship in Israel. They're Arab Muslims who were granted citizenship in Israel. Have been the freest, best educated, healthiest, and most prosperous Muslims in the world, at least apart from those whose personal fiefdoms float on oil, where they can afford to give these huge stipends to members of the family. But beyond that, the freest, best educated, most prosperous, most inventive, healthiest Muslims in the world are those who lived inside of Israel. And the reason that the Muslims decided that Israel had to be destroyed is that when you compared the prosperity of these people in Israel versus the hellish conditions they lived in the rest of the Islamic world, made Islam look really bad.
Well, it doesn't need Israel to make them look bad. They look bad, they look terrible by themselves. They don't need Israel to make them look bad. By the way, for people who don't know, Israel is only 5.5 million Jews in 8,000 square miles. The Muslims are 1,500 million on 28% of the land surface of the earth. Israel is 10,000 times more productive, pro rata, than the whole of the Muslim world put together. This is not propaganda either.
Right. You know, it's one of the things that the Quran protests is that the proof that Allah is God and that Islam is superior will be manifest in humankind, that you'll be able to compare the wealth and the progress of Muslims to the wealth and the progress, the inventiveness of non-Muslims, and you'll be able to judge whether or not Islam is superior. And that's one of the promises in the Quran. And yet when we look at the 50-some-odd Islamic countries and we compare them to non-Islamic countries, the opposite is true.
Well, let me enlighten the listeners how Allah, the God of Muhammad, is wrong.
Yes.
The Muslims are 20% of humanity. 20%. 1.5 billion.
Right.
They are the least productive, least inventive, least creative in human history.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
And the most deadly.
Anybody name 10 Muslims, 10, who have contributed anything for the advancement and betterment of humanity in the last 600 years? You can't. You can't even name 5.
Why don't you name a single product that is manufactured in an Islamic country, created in an Islamic country, manufactured in an Islamic country, that is desired on world markets?
None.
Why don't you name a single Islamic university that ranks in the top 100 universities in the world?
In the top 10,000 you won't find. There are no universities accredited in the whole of the Muslim world of 57 Muslim majority states in the world. None.
Why don't you name for me a science that was founded by a Muslim? You know, biology, chemistry, astronomy, please, anatomy. Name a science that was founded by a Muslim.
You can't. Impossible. Show me. I ask the same questions every time. They talk about Islamic civilization. There was never an Islamic civilization.
Never.
It's an oxymoron.
Of course.
You cannot ever have Islam and civilization, because under Sharia you are only obliged to read the Quran and behave under Sharia. You're not supposed to do anything else. By the way, the greatest thinkers of so-called Muslims, or in fact they were people under Islam,
right,
not one of them was a religious Muslim.
Correct.
They were all secular Muslims. What I mean by secular Muslims, which again is an oxymoron. You cannot be a true Muslim unless you are a jihadi Muslim.
Correct.
So these people could go to the mosque, pray like everybody else, but they were secular in the sense they were free-minded.
Right. Now, there was a period of time where under Islamic domination, there were some advances in mathematics, and there were some benefits historically as it relates to salvaged ancient documents. But it needs to be known that during this brief period of time, 100% of those who made the advancements were not Muslims. They were slaves to the Muslims because their people were conquered, and it wasn't Muslims who were salvaging the books. Muslims destroyed vastly more than they salvaged.
By the way, you're absolutely right, of course. But when they call it Islamic civilization, I called it no. It's al-Mawali civilization. What do I mean by Mawali? The Mawali, when the Arabs, who were uncivilized, nomadic people, when they conquered the greatest 3 civilizations on earth, the Byzantine, Christian, the Sassanid, Iranian, Egypt and India, the people who converted to Islam were called Mawali. That means they belonged to the tribe to the Arab tribe that they converted with. Al-Mawla is a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu or a Zoroastrian who accepted Islam to survive.
Yes.
Because under Sharia he will be gone, he will be dead. And because they became so-called Muslims, they were the creative ones, exactly what you said. They were the people who translated the sciences of the Latins, of the Greeks, of the Indians, of the Zoroastrians, were Jews and Christians and nobody else. The Arabs were illiterate. The Quran tells you they were illiterate. Muhammad was illiterate.
Yep.
It was Jews and Christians who founded the civilization of Islam, or so-called Islam.
As a matter of fact, Arabic as a written language was conceived by the Syriac Christians. It was based on Hebrew, which is why there's the same number of letters. It's why the letters are called by the same name. That's why the letters have the same pronunciation. Written Arabic is a derivation of Hebrew, which is pretty funny when the Quran says it was written in pure Arabic. Well, pure Arabic didn't exist at the time Muhammad. Written Arabic did not exist at the time that Muhammad allegedly revealed the Quran, and that Arabic is actually an extension of Hebrew offered by the Syriac Christians so that they could bring some enlightenment to the Arabs who did not have a written language.
Absolutely true. And these are facts. The irony of what we're doing is that everything we are saying is based on knowledge available.
Yes.
That no human being can come and say, either you are lying or IQ you're lying. It is impossible. This is why nobody will come against us.
Of course.
Nobody.
Now, I want to speak a little bit in the final moments of this segment and in the next segment about how and when and why Muslims were indoctrinated to hate Jews, because it's important. This conflict that the world wants to see, this conflict between Jews and Muslims, this is not a two-sided affair. It's a one-sided fight. Muslims want what Jews possess, but Jews don't want anything to do with Muslims or their possessions. So the only thing that's important here is to understand how, when, and why Muslims came to not only hate Jews, but to covet what Jews have. And we're going to speak about the progression of Islamic hate through the Quran when we return. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. We're having a conversation with author IQ al-Rassooli, an expert on Islam. So, IQ, since this is a one-sided fight, since Muslims want and crave, which Jews have, but Jews don't want anything to do with Muslims or their possessions, they don't even want their land, let's talk about the animosity that was conceived by Muhammad through Islam. We have the first approximately 90 surahs that are associated with Mecca. Who was the primary enemy in those 90 Meccan surahs, and what was their primary theme?
The Quraysh, the tribe of Muhammad, because they did not believe in him as a prophet of Allah.
Okay, so in the first 90 Meccan surahs, their primary enemy, in fact their only enemy in those 90 Meccan surahs is the Meccan people themselves, Muhammad's own tribe, the Quraysh. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
All right.
Of course.
And the primary theme of those 90 Meccan surahs, I call it the never-ending argument. You've already hinted at it, but what's the primary theme of the 90 initial surahs chronologically?
Well, what Muhammad wanted is for the pagan Arabs to dismantle their pagan religion, get rid of the 360 gods and goddesses they believed in, have only one God, Allah, as the supreme and only God, and as Muhammad is Rasulullah, as the messenger of Allah. And they refused even that.
Right, because the Meccans said, you're a lunatic, you're demon-possessed, you're a crackpot, you're self-serving, you're a louse of a human being. We know you, Muhammad, and you're a complete fraud. And Muhammad said, in this never-ending argument, and all of this is written in the Quran, with those who knew Muhammad best saying he was demon-possessed, that he was a scam artist, a con man, a complete fraud, that he had no conversations with God. He was doing all of this for his own covetousness because he wanted more sex, power, and money. And all of it's recorded in the Quran, and then Muhammad's response is always the same. My God's going to get you. My God's going to send you to hell. My God's going to rip off your skin. He's going to pour molten pitch down your throats. My God's going to make you eat thorns. My God's going to see to it that you're forever tortured. Isn't that basically the theme of the first 90 surahs?
That's exactly what it is, and he actually fulfilled it in the end.
Yeah. Okay. So then we have 24 surahs that are allegedly revealed in Medina, and we have to use approximations here because the Quran is a jumbled mess. There's to actually say that these were here and those were theirs is a stretch because they're just a blended mess of meandering nonsense. But of the 24 that are attributed to Medina, the place was originally called Yathrib. After the Yehudim that were there and their god Yahowah. It was originally called Yathrib, and the population was comprised of 4 tribal groups, 3 of which were Jewish, correct?
Correct.
All right. And when Muhammad left Mecca and therefore the Quraysh, did he change his enemy? Was the Quraysh still his primary enemy, or do the Meccan surahs align Muslims against a different enemy?
Well, for the first 16 months when he went to Medina, the enemy was still the Quraysh. But after the 16 months where he wanted to convert the Jews to believe in him, and they refused, every single verse from then on for the next 10 years was against the Jews.
Yep. So we have a transition. Muhammad dropped his animosity towards the Quraysh, at least tabled it for a moment, and because the Jews were now living in proximity to him and they didn't recognize him as a prophet or his god Allah, that Muhammad turned on the Jews. The 3 tribes of Jews in Yathrib, what happened to them?
He exterminated them in the end.
Right. So he exterminated them. And that was the beginning of the Quranic and Islamic animosity to the Jews. Did the Jews ever attack him?
No, they were not tribes of arms. They were industrialists.
Right.
They were agriculturalists, and they were traders.
Right.
They were civilians.
So they didn't have an army. They didn't have a police force. They never wielded weapons against Muhammad, ever.
Never.
Is that correct? Never. So did they ever rob Muhammad or Muslims?
No.
No. Did Muslims rob them?
100%. Day until they could finish them off.
Yep. And then finally, after Muhammad overhunted Jews and killed all of them, did he change his enemy to, say, Christians because he had overhunted Jews?
100%. After he had overhunted the Jews of Arabia and the Christians of Arabia, by the way, he also demolished and destroyed the Christians of Arabia. Then he went out against the Christians north, which is in the Sham, which is what you call Syria today.